Sego! Hi everyone, my name's Melissa Johns and I'm Ganigehaga Waganadan or Mohawk Turtle Clan and French Canadian. I'm the digital and interactive lead at imagineNATIVE and I'm very excited to share this series of artist talks with you with support from CBC. You can catch these artist talks live throughout the week and any you miss you can find on our YouTube channel the day after the festival. You can also check out all of the works being discussed in these talks for free at the In Digital space if you followed the link on your screen. Now in for tuning in and enjoy!
Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the lands and territories on Turtle Island that we're all reaching across to gather here today. We at imagineNATIVE acknowledge that this land is located on present-day Takaranto or Toronto and is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Huron-Wendat, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. We acknowledge the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a treaty whose spirit is based in collective stewardship and reciprocity. We take the spirit of this covenant to the core of our operations as we bring artists and audiences from many nations across the globe together through our various initiatives and activities. So please take a moment to think of the land that you currently reside upon, wherever you may be, and acknowledge those who went before and those who have yet to come. So I'm so happy to introduce Hexe Fey, the artist behind the interactive fiction work Dirt Farmer, which combines poetry, fascinating web development tricks, and ASCII art. So for anyone who hasn't seen this experience, you can check it out at the online and digital space. Just follow the link on your screen. So where does Dirt Farmer come from? Like, how did this project come into existence?
It was a meditation on my garden and the state of this year, and not having the same freedom of movement that I usually do. I tend to be a wanderer, and I tend to spend at least a month or so outside of the US a year, and I couldn't do that this year. And so I started thinking about, what does travel look like? What does migration look like? What does staying home look like? What does our relationship to the earth look like? And that was just, the whole thing is sort of a meditation on that.
Yeah, I was going to say that's really beautiful. Dirt Farmer definitely evokes like garden. Like I even found myself thinking of like the square foot gardening method laid out in a grid, right? So I like, on that note, I think it's just really fascinating that you use digital media to explore more organic themes, because I think a lot of the time people seem to hold the concept of technology very apart from nature and living organisms. So for you, where does that link exist? Like, why blend the two?
Yeah, for me, they are like very intensely linked, because everything that we think of as technology comes from nature. Like, all of our computers are built with stuff from nature. Like, processors are made out of rocks, and plastic is made out of dinosaurs, I guess. So one of the things that I spend a lot of time thinking about in my own life, and try to bring into some of the work that I do, is that technology and nature are not separate. They're like very, very much linked, and that it's part of knowing that is being like, where do our resources come from? Like, and like, what does it look like to make art and interact with other humans with these tools that are built out of nature and eventually go back to nature, but currently aren't sustainable in any way, as far as like resource extraction and all of that stuff. I don't know. I spend a lot of time thinking about that.
I like that. I like that a lot, actually. For me, I'm still kind of trying to find that link. It's like, I do digital work about environment, but I don't do any, like, I don't really get out there and get into the dirt. So I've been thinking about that.
Yeah, I feel like we're not at a place yet where we can like choose to not use technology. It's just choosing how we use it. I feel like hopefully there will be a time and place in the future where like all of our technology is sustainable in some way. We're not there yet. Yeah.
So we get a lot of VR works in digital and interactive, and Dirt Farmer stands out in this really unique way because, you know, a lot of 360 video, a lot of like VR, sometimes AR, but not this interesting like interactive fiction. Can you tell me a little bit about how you got into digital media in general and then into the more experimental forms?
I've always been interested in technology in general and video games in particular. And um, many years ago, I was looking for like independent video games, like just like weird things, and found interactive fiction and really, really loved it because it reminded me of choose your own adventure stories. And I found out that the tools to build them were just as easy and accessible as being able to play them. And so I just started making my own.
I was going to say your online presence is very vague and mysterious, and I'm a little curious about who Hexe Fey is. I'd love to hear some more of your background, like your mythical origin story.
Okay. I love that idea of a mythical origin story because everyone's a little bit mythical and a little bit not. Like we're all living in a world and creating our own stories. One of the reasons that I don't have a lot of information online is because I just don't like talking about myself that much. So again, like introducing myself is like another thing where I'm like, oh, and I have to do that. Yeah. I grew up in Seattle. My father's Oglala Lakota, my mother isn't. I've spent most of my time in the art world just in like a queer underground type of space where we just like make things because we like them. And got very interested in the possibility of using technology and digital storytelling when I realized that it was more accessible than it used to be. Because like for quite a while, like there wasn't any way to do this type of thing unless you had very specialized skills and training. And now there's quite a lot of ways you can teach yourself how to do almost anything to do with like digital art and media. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I really do love that it stems from the roots of like choose your own adventure games because those are just so fun. They're fun, they're simple, they like give you quite a bit of agency and they always kind of surprise you. When I read in your bio that you that you made an interactive fiction called Cursed Task that's about the pain of writing a bio, I lost it. That's so funny. Like that's just so funny and surprising and like I want to play that. So I mean, yeah, there's a fair bit of like humor in that, right? With Dirt Farmer, it seems to be like a little more straightforward, like a little more sobering. Sort of, where do you find that balance between like humor and poignant communication?
Honestly, it was just kind of how that project came together. My writing style tends to be pretty spare in general. Like I try and use as little words to convey concepts as possible. But that's just how I do things, I guess. It's an aesthetic choice, I guess. But this project ended up being a little bit more serious than some of the other ones that I've done. I tend to use humor a lot in my work, and this one is a little bit more serious. And yeah,
What was the process behind that?
but I often don't specifically plan how many threads. Well, that's not true. Sometimes I will have like a little like diagram like drawn out about like a flow chart. Yeah, it helps that the software that I use to build those actually has a visual flow chart when you're writing. Like it connects the different passages with little like boxes. So it's like visually really cool as far as like building narratives. But I've found that often when you're in the middle of writing something, you end up going off in a different direction than you expected. So, yeah.
So I noticed that some of the imagery in Dirt Farmer is like a little more abstracted, where some of it's like kind of recognizable as like having pop culture or like internet meme based roots. Like there's that one image of Nyan Cat, which I think might be a mural. I'd love if you could like kind of talk about what your process was for like just selecting these images and then transforming them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so all of the images were originally photographs of various things. Most of them were photographs of my garden, either plants that I put there or plants that volunteered themselves. There is one that is a photo of a mural that I painted in 2012 of Nyan Cat. I'm still surprised that I convinced someone to let me paint that on their building. Yeah, then with those photographs, I put them through an engine that turns them into an ASCII image. And through that, the images became very abstracted because you can't do clear detail with when you're just doing ASCII, stuff like that. It's not my first, but it's probably my most successful as far as I actually enjoyed the images that I created, whereas some of the other ones I was like, I don't like this.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the link to the organic, like if I went back now and look at some of those images, I bet I could pick out some plants maybe, but I like the idea that the colors are very much preserved and that references nature. Like especially some of the more like subdued browns and greens, not like fluorescent hacking text green. Yeah, I was going to ask like if your real life garden mimics that sort of minimalist approach or if it's just flourishing. And I'm gonna have to get you to send some pictures of your garden, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Right now it's less flourishing than it was earlier in the season because I've had less time to take care of it. I've been running around doing a lot of stuff. There's been a lot of movement in the city and like quite a lot of political uprisings and whatnot, and it's been difficult to stay at home, and so I've been neglecting my
So like how do you keep your spirits up in the face of like a pandemic and protests and political upheaval?
Trying to keep connected with people and yeah, try and support community and keep doing work that'll keep people alive and healthy and whatnot, because there's a lot of that work to be done. So and like sometimes it does feel extremely overwhelming, but sort of like keeping busy is useful. Then you don't like start in that spiral. So
yeah, well, I mean, like compassion fatigue is very, very real. So I guess it's it's important to be able to have that little plot of garden to go back to when kind of the world gets to be too much. So I know some of your previous work has dealt with like sort of queer play in Choose Your Own Adventure, and I'm really curious about how the sort of intersection of like queerness and indigeneity and then the digital aspect, like how that sort of comes together in your work and what drives that. Might be a big question, sorry.
It's such a big question. I feel like I could talk about that for days and trying to come up with one clear answer, because it's always shifting, right? Like how we interact with ourselves and technology and queerness and whatnot it's always a conversation and not just one aspect of ourselves. Honestly, I do find a lot of inspiration in the push and pull in the dualities, finding the spaces between concepts and practices that seem very separate and like how they connect to each other. And there's a lot of creative possibility in those transitional spaces. And like, what does it look like to interact with vastly different concepts and connect them? Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. So I think for a lot of people who are going to be seeing Dirt Farmer, it's going to be kind of a new type of work for them. What do you want to take, or what do you want them to take away from this experience?
Mostly that it is a really accessible form, not just as far as playing it, but also making it. Like whenever people ask me about interactive fiction, one of the first things I start talking about is how easy it is to make, and then I almost always try and convince them to make some themselves. It doesn't usually work, but yeah. But I feel like as far as like tools for creating stories and expressing yourself, it's really, really accessible. And I would love to see more people making more art with it. Yeah.
Cool. So Hex, could you tell us a little more about your upcoming projects, what we can look forward to from you?
So outside of doing interactive fiction work, I also do some like contemporary dance and performance stuff. And a collective that I've been working with for a couple years called Gender Tender is doing a performance but it's it's a research into the catalog of the Henry Art Gallery here, but also a continuation of our process of taking historical photos of queer uprisings and riots and turning them into contemporary dance. Yeah. I'm also working on an MFA in digital storytelling and decolonial art and whatnot. Super engaging, and like I do love the work, and I'm really excited to. This semester is just starting, so I'm excited to get back into it. Yeah.
All right, so thank you so much for your time today, Hex. It's an honor to have your work as part of the festival this year, and we really appreciate getting to know you and your practice. We're looking forward to every little or big project that's going to be coming our way, and really, really excited to see what you do next.
Nyawen, thank you so much, Hex, for your time today. It's been great to dive into your work like this. For everyone at home, be sure to check out Dirt Farmer on the InDigital space and tune in tomorrow for the final iteration of our Artist Talk series at 1 p.m. on the line with Zacharias Kinnock. Nyawen and Onengi.